Hi everybody, thanks for joining us. In this video, we're going to be talking about the HCL Factory Tour in Chelmsford. Real quickly, we're going to go through some thoughts about the factory tour, including what it is. We flew to Chelmsford, so we've got some interesting content to share with you there. We'll go over a roadmap for IBM Connections that was shared with us. By the way, this is a multi-parter, so this part deals with the connections, and we've got other parts that will be coming in pretty quick succession. So on the topics that we're covering today, we've got Connections roadmap in addition to thoughts on the factory tour, Connections assets, some interesting things for customers, a huge announcement about cloud, and the forthcoming HCL Digital Solutions Store. So let's start by introducing ourselves. I'm Colin Breckles with Castlebreck. Heiko?
Michael Wood from Harbor Light in Halifax. Mike?
Yeah, hi, I'm Michael Green with HCL. Graham?
And Graham Akers from Brightech Systems in Vancouver.
Look who I spotted. What's up, man?
Yeah,
Good to see you.
good to see you. How are you?
Good. Now we just have to go get Graham. Yeah, we're mobile finally. Graham's wheels down, got his bag. We're going to get him.
Absolutely.
All right, heading into HCL. Factory tour day one. Good to go.
So we can jump right into the thoughts on the factory tour. And for those that don't know, so it's an invitation event, but basically it's kind of, there's talk of sort of why aren't we doing Lotus Sphere, or why aren't we doing IBM Think, and HCL's answer to that is that a more intimate kind of setting with a smaller group of people where everybody can interact together is what they're looking to do. So this was the third factory tour. The last one was a year ago. The second was this spring in Milan, Italy, and I know Heiko was able to be at that one. This is the third one, and then the fourth one is going to be, I think it's in Japan in the fall. It's 2.5 days, so started with a full everybody in the room, and there was certainly more people this factory tour than the first one that I was at. I would say there had to be more than 100 people in the room, and definitely more, well, as I say, more than last time, but more customers too. So it was interesting to see kind of the mix of people that were there. But anyway, started with opening sessions. There were, I think, about 3 in the morning of the first day. And then it was breakout sessions. So we had 4 separate tracks that rotated around, which meant that each track was running in succession, and the presenters just moved to the different rooms. They split the overall group up into 4 different teams. I think I was team A. So we got a presentation, and then that presentation moved to the next team, and so on. And the big announcements happened in the mornings, both on the first and second day, and then the third day was the half day, and we wrapped up after lunch. Announcements, roadmaps. The roadmaps were really, really good, and we've actually got one slide in our presentation here where we're going to reiterate the one with respect to connections. But bottom line was that all of those roadmaps showed multi-year, kind of 3 to 4+ year timelines for all of the different products. So that was really valuable to see. And then at the end, there was a really neat opportunity where they did it started as Ask the Developers, but it really kind of turned into Ask the Product Managers. But it was everybody in the room. There was a microphone that was rotating around the room, and people could ask questions. There also was a session, it was earlier than that, that had the, I guess, air quotes, product managers, the key people, had an opportunity to ask the audience questions, which was really good. And I know Heiko gave some really good feedback. There was a question just about what is it that we can do better, and Heiko's immediate answers had shot up instantaneously, said more training, more education, which I think everybody feels pretty strongly about. So it was really good to be able to have the back and forth interaction, and you could go off and have a side conversation with different people. We saw that happening a lot. And then, the thing that I think a lot of us who have been in this world for a long time, or in this community for a long time, that got frustrated, when it came to asking pointed questions with IBM, and there was never a satisfying answer. I would suggest that in certain circumstances there were less than satisfying answers, but honestly, the openness, the willingness to talk about difficult subjects, certainly there were times where people in the audience were giving some pretty pointed and direct negative feedback, and it was all taken openly, and I mean, there wasn't anything that anybody was hiding from. So I felt very positive about it from that perspective. Maybe I'll give you guys a quick opportunity to add additional thoughts if you want, before we move on to the next slide. And of course, Mike, you work for HCL, so maybe I'll make you last, but Colin, any other quick thoughts on those ideas?
Well, I would really echo, from a macro level, HCL has been consistent in saying, here's what we promised you we would do, here's what we did do, thus making good on those promises to date. Point in time, and at the factory tour, and on other occasions, we've heard them say, here's where we know we're not quite where we want to be, or where we have a deficiency, and here's what we commit to do, and afford us the time and the opportunity to do it. And so they followed suit at the factory tour. Given what this organization has achieved in its tenure thus far in the prior stage of the relationship, they've gained a lot of credibility, and my conversation with all of our customers has certainly been, let's trust them to do what they say they're going to do from here forward. And so I think that was a consistent message throughout the factory tour, and they're real candid. There's some smirks and some smart aleck remarks where there's a deficiency, and the candor is pretty awesome. So that was something I certainly enjoyed.
Yeah, Heiko, you got any thoughts?
Well, we will talk about a couple of the tough decisions that they've been making. And what I found interesting is from this factory tour is that not only are they giving us a roadmap ahead and tell us about new features that they want that are going to come, but they're also not holding back about changing things that are, from their perspective, are not working perfectly or not working well. And they followed through with that as well, and talked about this pretty open and pretty straightforward to all of us, and we were able to give our feedback on those. We'll talk about this a little bit later during this presentation. So from that perspective, I really enjoyed the openness and the willingness to listen to everybody in the community, which is always, at least from my perspective, has always been one of the big bonuses that you have if you are invited to this special event, and you can really sit down and get into the nitty gritty and the dirty parts as well if you need to, and that's great.
So, Mike, what do you think?
I would echo all that, and I'd actually add a couple of different things. So I've actually been on board now with HCL for about 2.5 months or so, and my impression is HCL is very, very committed to this portfolio, and more importantly, I think, to the customers. And so HCL, they are just getting into the software business here, and I think the products are really important, and we're seeing that, like we said, in terms of like, robust roadmaps, but I'm also seeing it like in terms of commitment, like the number of people that they've hired, the number of developers that they are bringing on board to work on these things. And those numbers were always dwindling where, it came from before, but we're seeing a lot more commitment now. And it kind of makes sense, because I think what HCL wants to do is really retain and grow this customer base that they've purchased / inherited. And the way you're going to do that is by delivering solid value. And I think HCL is really, really committed to doing that. I spent 19 years at IBM this last stretch. And, I came over here because I like what they're doing with the portfolio and the customer set. And I really think they're committed and behind this. So I think we're going to see a lot more good things to come.
Cool. Okay, that's enough about the factory tour. Let's jump into some of the fun stuff. So, Mike, you've got the next slide on the roadmap for connections.
I do. So speaking of which, let's go ahead and talk about this. So for connections, and I also preface this by saying that in a lot of the discussions that I've been involved in, connections is a super, super important product over at HCL. I mean, they all are, Notes, Domino too, but I'm seeing a lot of focus on connections. And I think it's something that they obviously really want to do something with. So what we're looking at coming down the line for connections in Q3 of this year, we're going to be looking at Connections CR6 coming up, and that's great. But in Q4 of this year, we're going to see the first release from HCL of Connections, and that's going to be Connections 6.5. So I know that they're super, super excited and proud to be releasing this, as the first HCL branded version of that. So some of the things we're going to see are, the drive towards, consistency, and also to simplify the user experience of it. There's going to be a few features that are going to be introduced. So things like the sidebar, a feature like touch point, invites, and those are going to kind of be carried forward over into, the first few quarters of next year in 2020. And then in Q4 of 2020, we're going to be super excited. One of the other big things that they're going to be doing is to continue to drive down the TCO of Connections with things called the component pack. And if you're not familiar with the component pack, it's got a couple of really neat features with it. So things like Orient Me, Connections Customizer, Elasticsearch. So if you're not familiar with that, you definitely want to check out the Connections component pack. But where we're going with this is in 2020, we're going to be really excited to announce our first point release of Connections, and that's going to be V7. And we're targeting features like Orient Me Next, a much more advanced version of the Orient Me that's actually been kind of out there for a little bit. We're also talking about new ways to have tailored experience in the minimum viable product of Connections. We're also going to see, and this is something that I think is really going to open up Connections, is integration with other HCL products like Domino. I mean, you've always had a little bit of integration with it, with like the sidebar for Domino for Connections, but I think you're going to see a lot more modern experience with the integration. And then also integration with a lot of third-party products out there that organizations already use, and seeing those integrated into Connections. Another thing that is very much in line with HCL's cloud strategy is multi-tenant hosting, BP hosting for Connections. They want to make Connections very flexible in how it's deployed. And so whether it's your preference to host it, on-prem in a partner cloud, in a AWS or something like that, or containerized, we're going to have a lot more options for deployment going forward from there. And then continuing out to 2021, we're going to see a lot more features and just different options for Connections. Like I said, again, Connections is very much a strategic product for HCL, and I think you're going to be super excited when you see where it's going to go. So I think next, at this point, I turn it over to Heiko.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, you mentioned it already, and I'm just starting to get a little bit into the things that are very close ahead of us. So more or less in the time frame of Connections 6.5. A big part of this will be from a features and functions point of view of what's new in Connections 6.5. will be some connections assets that will be added to the product. A lot of you, or some of you, at least some larger organizations that are running connections, might know a couple of these things. These connections assets have been IBM Services assets previously. So these are all parts of connections that you could buy from IBM Services before, usually with a big pack of IBM Services consulting days inside of it. So it didn't really was that much appealing to a lot of smaller organizations. But nevertheless, these assets are really valuable, and they will be included now with 6.5 at no charge for you, for each and every connections user to use them, basically. They will take off, from my perspective, I would say, a lot of the rough edges that connections in the basic operations has, like in onboarding, in self-service capabilities, and also in a lot of administrational gaps that might have been there. So they will soften off a lot of the things that are that a lot of administrators and a lot of users are complaining about in connections. So what's in there basically? We have been told that it's going to be 4 assets actually that are included into this. One is called Social Sidebar, which is an asset that lets you integrate connections mainly into external websites, so in other applications that you might run into within your organization. So you can use connections functionality there. It allows things like status updates without switching into connections, so you can change your status inside of connections, and also a couple of other smaller actions in there. Another asset that's going to be in there is called Invite. Invite is there for especially to manage and integrate external users seamlessly into connections without having admin privileges, which is a huge step forward. So as you as a community owner can add external people without having to talk to your admin inside of your organization, which is one of the things that a lot of my customers are asking about. For these people, if you bring in external users, they had in the basic versions, they didn't have any chance to have like self-service capabilities like password changing and stuff like that. So there's always a hassle if you have password policies in place, and some external users lost their passwords, so you always have to nag your admin about them. All of these pains will go away with Invite. Another big asset that I have personally run into in a couple of connections deployments that we did is Touchpoint. And Touchpoint is basically addressing a lot of the issues that arise around onboarding and getting connections, communities, and or people inside of connections up to speed. So Touchpoint will help you by a click by a wizard to onboard people into connections when you start off with a new organization. Also, it allows you to deal with suggestions and connections to help you if you start as a new user to make connections inside your organizations, find people and expertise, and also find colleagues that you might find interesting and so forth. It's a very customizable tool. You can do a lot of things with it, and it's great for you to really have that on board to make your deployment of connections way more successful than without Touchpoint. And the last one is the IBM Extension Toolkit, IBM Connections Extension Toolkit, it's called, I see. This is more like an administration tool from my perspective. It helps you to, for example, search and merge profiles that might be coming into connections if you merge organizations together. You have things like content backup and restore, which I find pretty huge. So you can export, for example, community contents and restore that as well. So everything that like goes away over time, for example, if you have communities that are no longer active, but you still need the content, you can now archive this out of connections and archive it. And if necessary, you can restore it so people can reuse the content. This supports exporting content as PDFs, including templates for that. So lots of stuff, lots of nice little features and long-awaited functionality that are happening with these in 6.5, so pretty close down the road. And I think that's a huge gain for a lot of connections, existing connections implementations, but also for new ones.
They advertised it as
The big elephant
ICXT.
in the room. Oh, sorry, Graham.
Sorry, I smiled because it says ICXT, which stands for IBM Connections, and it obviously needs to be rebranded as HCXT, but it was presented as ICXT. It was kind of
yes, it was still presented as the old asset that has been from IBM Services, but I'm pretty much sure it will be HCL washed by the time it will surface in 6.5. But there's a big elephant in the room, and I think, Colin, I think I'll pass it on to you. Connections Cloud announcements. What's that to mean?
Big announcement indeed. So let's come right out and say it. IBM Connections Cloud will be sunset by July 2020. And HCL has been very direct about it, that it really wants to push forward, meet customer need, and it doesn't see itself offering a mail and calendaring focused workloads in its own cloud. It is looking at an HCL branded cloud offering that would have social and collaboration capabilities, but specifically not mail and calendaring, which is what a good portion of customers who use Connections Cloud today do use it for. So those customers are free to either run it on premise, run it in a public cloud, or in a partner-led cloud. And of course, I'd be remiss if not mentioning it's totally, admittedly self-serving, but many partners, including Castlebrec, do have partner-led clouds. We have private cloud infrastructures as well as mature, well thought out public cloud-based hosting. So talk to your partner and consider your strategy if you're a customer affected by this. It's worth noting that many customers who bought dual entitlement entitled a customer to have the same user, dual entitled to run either on-premise or in IBM Connections Cloud. Not all of these organizations took advantage of it, so some of them kept the users on-prem. Others did, in fact, start moving significant numbers of mailboxes to Connections Cloud. And some of these customers, we're actually having a lot of conversations with customers now who are wanting to get out and in front of it. In fact, immediately after this call is recorded, we're hopping on a call with one such customer, and we've got a bunch more that we're having discussions with. So you got until July 2020. It's not a super long runway, but it's adequate for customers to plan and execute accordingly. And for collaboration, there'll be a lot of goodness coming from HCL, we expect. Sorry for the short infomercial, trying to not make it go that way, but shame on us if we don't tell you what we do. You'll find it elsewhere.
And I think it's important.
It's worth noting, I think, that especially like from what we heard so far is that whoever has licenses bought on Connections Cloud will receive similar licensing for on-prem or bring your own licenses models for the cloud models that Colin has been mentioning. So nobody will be left out in the cold from HCL, besides what some Microsoft people are trying to tell customers. That's definitely not the case.
Yeah, customers needn't fear. And it's worth noting that people run a hybrid architecture too, where there's some domino infrastructure on-prem with directory and perhaps even some mailboxes or not. So there's a way to migrate customers that doesn't involve starting over with a greenfield and losing data, et cetera, keeping your organization, your security. So there needn't be unnecessary alarm. Of course, competitors would see it. There would be opportunists and would try to throw rocks, but customers needn't panic. There's solutions for these things, and just engage in some thoughtful discussions and plan your strategy accordingly. Yeah, and on the note of licensing, HCL is largely respecting the IBM license for current version. We understand, and Mike, I don't know if you have heard anything more recent than the factory tour, but the general message we were getting was that for V10, the existing licenses would be respected, but that HCL intends to do some simplification and have some new license offerings come V11. don't know if you want to jump in at all or just a wait.
Yeah, that is correct. The overall message that HCL wants to deliver to the market is don't worry about your licensing. Like Heiko said, some of the like the dual entitlement and the cloud only licenses are going away, and you will be granted equivalent functionality either on-prem. If you want to stay subscription model, you can say subscription model. And then for some of the upcoming things, for right now, we want to keep it as simple as possible. So like things like the old IBM part numbers and descriptions will remain the same. So you at least understand what the new licensing, you'll be able to make sense of that. Some of the part numbers in V11 may be replaced with HCL part numbers at that point in time. But for now, we want to keep it as simple as least disruptive as possible.
Absolutely. Well, and I guess HCL, forgive me if I'm talking out of school, I don't want to misconstrue this, but my impression is that HCL kind of assumes IBM's responsibilities for V10. And in 11, with the new version, HCL gets to make some decisions about what it might like to do with licensing. And in general, they're trying to simplify, not make it harder for customers. So.
Yeah, I would say that's true. And that actually continues over into even the product roadmap. I think you guys will see a lot of stuff in V11 that's really super exciting.
The next topic is the digital solutions store. And this is pretty neat. It seems like it's responding to inquiries from the market. One thing that's noteworthy is the strategy is definitely evolving. HCL are seeking and receiving. They're certainly receiving very vigorous and pointed feedback because people seem to have strong opinions about this now. So what I want to talk about is at a high level what was shared at the factory tour, and then kind of discuss how that aligns to some industry practices right now. So what is a digital solution store? It'll offer both freemium and paid licenses now, and these can be offered different ways. These can be unlimited. They could be time bombed so that you can get an app in your hands and experience it. And so it's up to the vendor whether it's free or fee-based. In the initial incarnation, HCL indicated that the App Store won't actually do the billing. So the App Store is a way to acquire the license where if an order is placed through the App Store, presumably the customer, the end user customer, would receive an invoice from the vendor who actually developed the app. One of the intents is to automate the installation, just reduce the complexity, give a little bit of consistency for how an enterprise acquires and installs apps. This is going to be phased. So we all know that app architectures have evolved. People used to wrap everything up in an NTF or NSFs and distribute it thusly. Nowadays, there's a lot of ways to distribute the apps. There's Java, there's Node.js, there's front-end frameworks, there's all kinds of things, and a lot of it doesn't involve being stuck inside an NSF. People are doing things the way the rest of the web is, like we've talked in other videos. They're talking about that, but what they said is they want to keep this simple. In the initial phase, the objective is that the app has to be distributed as an NTF. So all assets would be packaged into an NTF, therefore giving some consistency in how apps from different vendors could be acquired and deployed. Another topic is admins will have some oversight for who in an organization owns an app. And that moves on to the topic of the corporate app store. So the corporate app store, what does this really mean? It means that companies, especially large ones, don't want people installing random apps that haven't been vetted. Presumably HCL wants to do some vetting, but large enterprises want to do their own vetting. And what we see out in industry, if you look at unified endpoint management, formerly known as mobile device management, the trend is that when you have a corporate app store, there's a universe of apps that would be available for a platform. So if you take iOS, for example, there's lots of apps out there, many of which an organization might not want its employees to deploy to corporate-owned devices. So how does it work? Well, what they do is through Apple have something called Apple Business Manager, where you can go and say, I want to buy 10,000 of these and 600 of those and 50 of those. And the licenses are bought and owned by the enterprise. So you don't have the credentials of an individual user. There's not somebody's own iTunes credentials used. And then on the individual corporate-owned device, approved apps can be deployed to that device. So this model is pretty well proven. I think I'd be surprised if we don't see some evolution somewhere towards that, just because it is such a proven model for MDM. And that's not HCL speaking, that's conjecture on my part. So I'll separate what they told us versus rampant conjecture on my part. But the main thing that they did certainly tell us is that the thrust of a corporate app store is approved apps approved by the customer organization. Also, there was discussion about an app store links or user interface showing up right in the Notes client. And I think there's still some discussion on administration or delegated administration, meaning if you're going to show it up in the Notes client, is that to say a business user can go and acquire licenses? So more to come, certainly a whole lot more to come. HCL are soliciting and receiving more than they're soliciting in the way of feedback, and I think we'll find out more in the coming months. But this is something that they do intend to execute on, and actually, the note of taking themselves out of the billing is kind of interesting, because that actually means that they can probably execute on it more quickly. As soon as payments and agreements enter into it, you certainly can get bogged down for quite a bit. So I think they've made some smart decisions to make it a little bit easier to execute on this and deliver some value without focusing on the things that aren't at the core of where the value add happens. So I think it's pretty neat, and I guess I'll pause and ask you guys if you guys want to jump in on the digital solution store at all.
The only thought that I had, I also have a role to play with OpenNTF, and so there's been some preliminary conversation about how to also surface open source solutions through the digital solution store. Again, making the distinction between corporate or commercial, I guess is a better way to put it, commercial applications that would be available through this, the primary reason for having the digital solution store, but then at the same time, offering up OpenNTF assets that have been out there for a very long time. So it's a more wider encompassing solution, or at least conversation, than specific pay for apps.
Okay, thanks for that, Graham. Heiko, anything to add on digital solutions?
I had a couple of discussions with a lot of my customers, and as you mentioned, a couple of them had very strong opinions about it. Whether they want to, especially my German customers, are very, very reluctant of opening up their Domino deployments to an external app store to let people on a departmental level decide what applications they want to have inside of their organization. So I think this two-leg approach that they're taking with the public app store and the corporate app store is a good way to mitigate this. And so I'm only keen to see the first incarnation of it and see how it really works out if we have to deal with it inside of a large organization. And so it's a good way forward, I think.
Absolutely. Mike, any thoughts on digital solutions?
Yeah, net, I think it's a great thing. Like Heiko said, if you don't want to use the public one, you don't have to. But I think it's a great way, modern way to, get code, but also to be exposed to the whole ecosystem and what's available as add-ons to the product that you own.
Good point.
And that's something that under its previous life, it was tried, but it never really it was never done really well. But, part of the nice thing about Domino and its extensibility is the different things that you can add onto it. And so having an easy way to get exposed to those through something like the digital solution store is a huge step forward, and I think will serve the product really well.
And I think we're actually remiss not already having a bulletin on exactly that, Mike. To expand on that, they mentioned it appeases the concern of the perception of the ecosystem when people see a lot of apps on the digital solution store and just how many apps there are out there. It's reaffirming, and it gives a lot of confidence to the customer organization.
Yeah.
We'll throw it over to Mike to close us off.
Okay, awesome. Sounds great. Well, hey, listen, I want to thank everybody for watching. We enjoy producing these videos, and hopefully you enjoy and find them useful too. So please, on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, let us know what you think. If you have any topics that you'd like to see us do future videos on, please let us know that. And also, if you click the bell icon in the YouTube page to receive notifications of our new videos, that really helps us out a lot. You know, we promise you won't get dinged to death, but hopefully you'll get dinged more in the future as we produce more and more videos with your suggestions and comments. And then lastly, please visit us at the URL below at www.c3ug.ca. Again, thanks everybody for your time, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.